Welcome back to another Web Dev Podcast episode where we help aspiring developers get jobs and junior developers grow. So today's topic, we are going to dive into, are aspiring developers really prepared? What's going on with the market? And, do the skills, do the expectations line up? And hopefully you can get quite a bit of advice as an aspiring developer from this episode. But I invited on Derek. We've had him on before. He's a very candid personality. He's pretty active on Reddit as well. And so, like usual, I like to bring you candid conversations. So, Derek, feel free to, give a little intro for yourself and we'll dive into it.
Yeah, sure. I'm from San Diego. I, whatever, grew up skateboarding, went to art school, didn't really find myself doing web development until like 2011, sort of took over my life. And now I end up in all sorts of different web development roles from, like freelancing to contracting to like whatever, senior product designer roles. And I do a lot of stuff with like education. So that's what I'm up to.
Awesome. All right. So, to kind of just be candid, you saw one of my rants. It was a live stream, and I was just ranting about how so many people are completely underprepared to enter the industry right now. There are a lot of variables, but I went off on a rant, and you had a lot to say on that. So I'd love to hear your perspective on where you think people are and what they're struggling with right now for aspiring developers.
Yeah, sure. So obviously I don't know everything about everything. I'm just a person, but I do happen to have an interesting history. I mean, I've been answering questions on Stack Overflow for like over a decade and helping out in Discords and long gone forums and all sorts of things. And I offer advice to people, and I meet a lot of web developers, but I don't think I meet as many as you do, Don. But I meet a lot of web developers, at least a couple a week, doing portfolio reviews. I talk to people, helping them choose a boot camp maybe, or what help them figure out just where they fit in the field, or review their portfolios. And yeah, when I saw your kind of rant, I was, a lot of that stuff was lining up with what I'm seeing. And I mean, I don't mean to joke about it. It's not very fun for some people, but I think that, like, I mean, you were just talking, you had so many bullet points, but like false expectations, just like the market right now, but like, what is a boot camp even capable of? Like, there's just so many things to consider. And how do you break that down? Like, is it a boot camp versus student story? Is it an idea of what should be taught story? Is it about what we think the industry needs story? And I don't know. It's just like you have to kind of break it open and talk about all the pieces of it. But I would say, like, just to start off with something that I've kind of typed out on Reddit like 100 times over the last couple of months and then deleted. I just feel like I have to say it. I've met a lot of web developers lately, and I like could not pay them $5 an hour or even like $0 an hour, like, because they're really at the point where they're a liability. Like, it's just that it's that off the mark is how I would say it, and that's kind of shocking. Like, I'm shocked.
Yeah, I've noticed a huge skill difference in terms of the majority of what aspiring developers are capable of. So the expectations from companies have gone up a little bit as so many developers flood the market, and developers that have been laid off are also trying to apply for positions. And I feel like the expectations for an entry-level dev, it's gone up. And then somehow the skill level of most aspiring developers, or at least significantly more, it's gone down. And so there's a huge skill gap that I see. And I think so many people, and their mother and their father and everyone they know, wants to become a developer. We experienced a pandemic, and it made people think about, like, do I want to be doing this for the rest of my life? It had a lot of people rethinking their careers, and you had content creators pushing, like, hey, become a developer. You had coding boot camps pushing, hey, become a developer. This career is awesome. And so many people have been trying to become a developer for many years. And we had a little bit of a boom around 2021, 2022. And then that has significantly gone down. So we have a lot of interest in the industry and a lot of people getting into the industry that, quite frankly, might not be capable, or they're not truly interested in coding. Like, they're getting in for a career change, but they don't they don't want to wake up and dig into their project. They're not excited about learning something new. They're just, give me the most optimal path to learn so I can land a 100K position as soon as possible. And so many people want this. And I've just noticed a massive skill gap. And I think that's the reason. What do you think about that?
I think you could say that it's maybe culturally like wider than this because I mean, some of the people I've taught and people I've worked with over the years and stuff, it's like, they just didn't really want to do it or, but they thought they could. Like the gap between what they thought was a reasonable amount of time or work or what was going to happen or just like there's just a disconnect. They're like, I want to be a developer. And you're like, okay, you'll know that then you'll have to go to work and develop things, right? And I mean, I think they're just like, what's he talking about? Like, that's not how that's not how my blurry story that I'm enjoying right now works. So I don't know, but I see it in lots of areas. I mean, I go out to restaurants and people don't know how to like bring food to your table. It's like crazy. Like there's a lot of just like disconnect with what I would consider follow through and I think a lot of parts of life that's not just web development, but that maybe that marketing feeds into that, right? Like if somebody says whatever, you're saying, sign up for this thing, follow the rules, follow the leader, and you'll somehow get a really high paying job. I think it just might match up with some other things in society, possibly.
That okay, that's a really interesting take. I don't think I've ever heard that before. So you're saying you've seen that essentially culturally in society, you've seen that in other professions, and so it's not necessarily kind of a web dev thing, which I kind of focused on. You're seeing just a lack of follow through with a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like it's a weird like logic world right now. Like you have your kind of like pedantic 4chan people who are like, got their pitchforks out and then they know all the special like idioms and logical fallacies and and they'll call you out and they'll be like, that's a straw man argument. And then, but you'll just say like, all right, show me your portfolio, show me your work. You're saying you can't get a job. Show me your work. I'll sit with you. I'll look at it. Let's see. Can you make a website or not? And they're just like, I shouldn't have to have a website, that's not fair. I hate the government, but I should also get like these things should be given to me. Like there should be an amount of corporate responsibility. And I mean, it almost borderlines on, whatever it's called, like involuntary celibate people, the people who are like, I should get a girlfriend delivered to me. Like, I'm like, what are you talking about? This isn't that serious. Like websites, HTTP, sending HTML files around. You can put things on that page that could make people money. People want to pay you to know how to make websites. Can you make them or not? But it's like nobody wants to talk about it. Like I'm some kind of crazy cult maniac for expecting people to actually know how to make a website, like at the basic level. Like, cool, can I type create React app? No. Well, I can't do it.
So kind of like it just sounds like you're seeing a lot of entitlement. So a lot of people coming in expecting, and so let me, I guess, give a couple examples to make sure I understand correctly. Like I see a lot of people that feel like there should be companies should provide or they should give junior developers a chance. I think that's a really good example. You hear that a lot. Companies should give junior developers a chance. And the reality is companies have a budget and a very limited budget right now, and they want people to ramp up very quickly, and they're going to hire people that ramp up very quickly. And they're looking for long-lasting developers, and I think good junior developers with a great personality can be that good cultural fit for them long-term. But, it seems like a lot of people expect companies give them a chance, and companies don't owe them jack shit at all. They're a business.
I mean, it's nice. It's nice. I mean, yeah. The place I worked at, last like full-time job I had at Pixel agency, they brought someone on who was in their computer science degree and had them interning. They had someone from a boot camp up in Portland, they had somebody who kind of transferred over from the marketing side of the team, and she wanted to get on the dev team. And I was sort of in like a senior role there. And, they were like a really nice company who was like bringing everybody up. I think she's like one of their main developers now and everything. So, I mean, those companies exist. They still exist today. But I think then that's another spectrum. Like, I mean, I really tried to draw out a chart. Like, this is what I'm going to talk to Todd about. But it's like so multidimensional. It's like, and so I didn't know where to jump in on that. Sorry, I think I chose the wrong spot. But like, when I started like freelancing, started working at a little dev shop. Like, that's a lot different than going straight in for like software developer two at Facebook or whatever. Like, those are different worlds for different reasons. Who knows if they actually do harder work there? But there's a reason why they're called like software engineers there, because they're creating an idea that they have this like hierarchical tiered system that holds you accountable for your skill level, and that over the decades they can tell where to keep you and where to use you for the most benefit. But there's tons of other jobs, and I feel like in a way boot camps, and this isn't like anti-boot camp, I'm just saying like there are tools and they have like limits. In one way, they're not preparing you enough for like software engineering roles, and some of them have marketed themselves that way, so it's their fault for like putting themselves in that position. But at the same time, they're not helping people learn how to maybe round down and work at like a WordPress shop or something, because they only know how to make this one kind of middle of the road, like brittle React kind of app. I mean, there are some better boot camps that teach more like more back end and stuff. So again, I'm just saying not everybody is cut out to go for this one particular software engineer role. I mean, I'm hardly a software engineer, I work more kind of as a UX designer, like UX engineer. I kind of always am in between either like product manager, engineer, or designer, like somewhere in between those other areas. But I think by not preparing people for like a wider variety of roles, in a way that's problematic too. Because it's kind of like, well, you're either going to slide into this one position or you're just going to like basically get depressed and start over. And that's a bummer, because I think that there are a much wider variety of roles that are not in that realm, that people don't know exist and are not applying to, and aren't prepared for those. Like, you could say, oh, email developer isn't as technically difficult as whatever, full stack MERN developer. But in a way, it's just as much domain specific knowledge and time to get good at that. I mean, it's a weird world. I know someone who like runs a email HTML team of people, and somebody at that last job, that was their main job. So I'm not saying that we should all just like round down to being technical phone answerers because like we couldn't get the job we want. But I am saying that there is a wide variety of jobs, and that they cross over many areas, and that, yeah, I think people could be better prepared for that.
Since everyone's shitting on coding boot camps so often, I think that's actually a really good place to start. So you had mentioned a lot of coding boot camps are trying to essentially pigeonhole developers into this specific type of software engineer role, and a lot of people are trying to become this. But what they're producing, you gave an example of like, well, they kind of built a flaky React app. What are coding boot camps like? How are they failing to prepare developers in the way that you would like them to be prepared?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I personally have had to hire people and help people hire people. And I like things like knowing HTML and CSS matter to me. So I think it's interesting that the bootcamp always kind of offsets it to like a 3-week free class at the beginning. Like, if it was that easy, there wouldn't be a trillion questions every day in like all of the CSS forums. Half the websites wouldn't be all broken. And I'm not saying that you have to like totally super specialize on that. But I also think that in telling that story of kind of the history of HTML, you start to see, okay, HTML is a data structure. Like, what other ways could we send data across the internet? Like, why is HTML important for screen readers, for people who are using assistive technology, for people who are scraping websites, for people who are ordering on their voice activated phones to order a hamburger from down the street, for AI and things to script to like read it. Like these structures, it's like people want to skip over HTML and stuff, but HTML is a great way to teach about JavaScript. It's already a data structure. And if you learn CSS selectors well, you already know how to select everything out of the DOM. So to me, instead of just like, I don't think you have to spend, 5 months focusing on it, but there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to build an A plus dead simple 1998 website before you go in and add 70,000 layers of other problems to it. And I like JavaScript. Like I like building a website with Nuxt or whatever. Like I'm not full on like HTMX only or anything, but but I think that matters because it builds up the story. And then you say, oh, okay, now let's talk about what do I do when I run into a situation where I'm copying and pasting my header and my footer and my whatever, my navigation. Why might I need a server to make some decisions about a database and then build out some new HTML for me? Like these stories make connections, which makes connections, which makes connections. So if you dive in and you just follow the Ruby on Rails tutorial by yourself for 5 weeks, what's the difference between that and a bootcamp then? Because if you're not getting that storyline and you're not connecting it and then coming up and saying, okay, so here's where the server side kind of like ends, or here's where we get blocked and like JavaScript comes to save the day. Here's a really good example of like JavaScript was invented just so that you'd get a validation response from your form, so you didn't like leave the page to buy something or whatever. But these little historical like connections, then you know what you're actually doing. Like, why am I using React? Like, yeah, it's nice and it's easy for teaching to be like, oh, it's a component, it goes there. Now they're all in little files, and I don't know. It just seems like people like are trying to reproduce an unreproducible teaching experience. And I think that it's nice for the teachers to teach some of these ways, but it doesn't necessarily have the impact. And I mean, I think that it's just proof at this point. Like there's a lot of smart people with backgrounds in like intense degrees, like, biology majors going to a boot camp and then they come out like not able to do anything. And so, I mean, it seems like we've had plenty of time to make adjustments. Like you can make a new curriculum, like should just always be evolving all the time. But I hear so often, oh yeah, we had to quit our cohort, or we had to, or yeah, we're still using classes and all this stuff's out of date or whatever. I mean, should things really be so easily out of date that you can't buy a Mac M1 because like Homebrew and your entire system is based on those specific GitHub repos? I mean, it just doesn't seem like, yeah, I don't know. All I know is like people should be able to make websites when they come, when they spend a whole bunch of time learning to make websites. And it doesn't seem like they are able to, and it's a bummer. But the other part is they don't seem to care. They don't seem to know, and they seem confused. And they're like, well, I don't know. I mean, I worked on my website a lot. I don't want to work on it anymore. Why can't just a job appear? This sucks. But I don't know. They're just disconnected from like, the hard-won self-taught route in a way. Because, I had to stay up all night. I had to like learn all this stuff. But I don't know. It depends. I think also it depends what kind of combination people have. Have they gone to school recently? Have they followed through with things? Do they have a background that's going to connect? Are they good to be around in the workplace environment? Like there's a lot of combinations that I think can work. And I think there's a lot of boot camps that are really doing their best. There's definitely some that are like knowingly doing their worst. But I think that, there's a lot of really good ones.
I love this. A lot to unpack there. Let's,
Sorry.
No, this is good. Well, I mean,
talk like every 6 months. Otherwise it just becomes a big mound of,
it seems like you have a lot to vent about, and that's why it's good.
Like I did, but I guess I do a little bit. I mean, I spend a lot of time trying to really honestly get people to talk about this stuff, and kind of you kind of got to lean people around and say like, well, okay, well, what is the problem? Why, have you, what what kind of jobs are you applying for? And I'll even ask, like I went to the JavaScript meetup yesterday at lunch. We have one the first Tuesdays of every month JavaScript meetup. And there's even there saying, I gotta find a job, or I can't find a job. And I say, well, what's your deal? What's the thing I should hire you for? And invariably most people can't tell me. I think so that's another problem. I think people don't need to niche super hard into something, and it is the beginning of their career, and they're going to have to kind of figure that out as they go. But I do think it's going to help people stand out if they have a little bit of opinion, nerd out on something a little bit, like no matter what it is. Like maybe you're just obsessed with learning about assistive technology, and like you don't care anything about anything but those ARIA labels and stuff like that. Or maybe you like these whimsical little button micro animations, like when you push the like button on YouTube and it makes little stars or something. Or maybe you're obsessed with performance or something. But I think just sort of being able to like put together, and I think I've heard you say this before, like getting a basic React app working is just a start. Like no one's ever going to ask you to do that at work. Like that's just getting the foundation ready. Now you have to build out features that there is no tutorial for. Like that is the job. And that is what I don't think people are like prepared for.
You had mentioned something a bit earlier. Going through essentially a story. Like,
Yeah.
for example, when do we actually... How do I want to start this? Do I want to start with questions I hate? Or question? Let's actually do a couple questions that I hate. At what point do I master CSS before I learn JavaScript? I hate the word master.
Yeah.
Like people are going into this with trying to get a timeline of, okay, I'm going to spend this timeline on this language, this timeline on this language, this timeline on this language. And they're not going into it trying to understand the building blocks, the fundamental pieces. Okay, so like what is HTML? Why is it used? Let's use it. Let's experiment with it, but it's lacking. Where is it lacking? What do we use to be able to supplement that HTML, right? Like when you learn and you go through a curriculum, a good curriculum is going to essentially tell a story that kind of leads to abstraction and bigger abstractions that solve the problems that came from managing very like large websites and large companies where you have a huge team of developers and you need to be able to scale this thing. Abstractions are built to be able to kind of help with that. There are a lot of things that are added to that to be able to help, but a lot of these, like going through fundamental CSS, you take CSS grid away from someone, a lot of people are going to flail. They don't know how the hell to organize a website. Try taking Flexbox away from someone. You used to be able to position all of these elements just fine without Flexbox, with CSS grid, and the trick is you still can. And you take those two things away and people are done. They can't do jack shit. And I think like that alone really highlights the problem. They are just diving into way too many abstractions way too quickly, and you try to introduce them to problems where they can't have a nice, neat package framework to be able to do 1,000 different things to solve their problem because they don't know the steps that framework takes. They don't know the need and the use cases for that framework. They are lost. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would shift your scale a little. I think, like, I mean, it's funny because I'm working with some people this week and I'm forcing them to do everything with floats, and I'm starting to wonder, like, did I even really do this? But I would say, I would say at this point, like, Flexbox and Grid are just like core, all right?
Okay.
But I would say that I would replace that with maybe material design, like next material design, where like it's 7 layers more than that, right? Like you can't do it without, not only can't you do it without JavaScript and like a set of design tokens or something. I mean, I haven't really used it, but you also can't do it with this version without this version of React. And you also can't do it without this version of Next or whatever, or Next, and you have to use TypeScript or whatever. But I do think there's a certain sort of person who's like, that's their lane, right? They stitch everything together, and maybe they are the MVP type freelance person, and good for them. But I'm just saying, if you're trying to, I would hope that if somebody got halfway through the program and they realized like that's all they got, some people are slower than other people, that they'd come away with whatever was at that point, as opposed to kind of being like, okay, you are all in React person, or you're just like kind of bad at everything else. Because, why can't we just get incrementally better at things? I mean, you're writing HTML every day from day one. So the only way they can be screwing it up is if they never got any of it right to begin with. So they've been practicing the bad habits the whole time. Because what does React do? It just creates HTML. I mean, everything is just creating HTML. I mean, it's just creating DOM, like how it does it, how it gets it done. Who cares? But like, it still has to be good. I mean, it should be. We have all these courses and speakers and, accessibility for React websites. Instead of just like making a website properly, let's figure out how to fix everything when we're done. And we've used all divs instead of buttons and all this stuff. I mean, luckily we've come a long way. Like, all of the framework people work really hard to keep everything as accessible as possible. But there was a Angular 1.5 time period, and it was a wild west there of SPA stuff. But yeah, I agree that people need to be able to build the confidence with the core building blocks. Whether that be, can I just build a to-do app with regular JavaScript or Python or PHP? Like, can I figure out why I would want to organize my folders in a certain way? Can I just be honest? Can I get to the point where I am not just trying to find the only right way, the mysterious, like, holy grail of finally I'll know how to do everything the right way, and then I can relax because now I can make all web apps perfectly. Like, that idea, I can hardly get it out of my head. I've been like working at it for like 13 years to get it out of there. I mean, like, I had to like start over halfway through my career because I had to like undo all that mentality. But so, yeah, I don't know. And so I guess part of it is like, what is reasonable? What can a boot camp even do? Like, are they trying to do too much? Are they trying to do the wrong section for the wrong people? Should they have multiple time periods? I mean, some schools in the past have had like 3 different blocks. Yeah, I don't know. That's just another angle, is like, how, we could improve, but maybe it's just a time period problem. I mean, maybe 3 months is too fast. I mean, I think you kind of need time to soak it in, but it depends where you are. Like, I personally think if I had gone to a coding boot camp in like 2015, or, I'd been in my doing, like, learning myself, and I'd had jobs and everything for 4 years, like, I might have been a good candidate at that moment because I didn't know what I didn't know. They would have probably told me more about the bigger picture of the industry, like more about web application architecture. Like, it probably would have like skyrocketed my career at that moment. But for anyone else, like right now, who hasn't like spent a lot of time just getting comfortable with the difficulty of building websites, I just don't know how you could just launch yourself into anything that fast. I mean, I tried to make like a program where I was working with people for 6 months, and I had to extend it to 9 months. And even then it's goes on for like a year. And it just goes. Sometimes I work with people for years, and like, it's just a lot. It's a lot of stuff to do. And it's a lot of different change in mindset and time management. And I don't know, maybe you just can't do things that fast, but I know it works for some people. So, but yeah, I guess, who are we worried about? We're not worried about the people it works for. We're trying to help the people who like it's not working for, I guess.
Yeah. So I think there is a simple solution that is not financially doable right now. Coding boot camps need to extend the program. Students aren't willing to pay the extra money to be able to accommodate that. And I think it's because a lot of new developers are giving false expectations of what needs to be learned. And I think there needs to be an initial, just candid conversation that, quite frankly, most people are not going to be good for this field. They're not going to be interested and curious enough to dive into tech and not go the perfect linear path. Like you want people that come into this industry that are like, you know what, I'm going to waste an entire weekend setting up my Raspberry Pi. I want to become a web developer, but I don't care. I want to do this thing with this thing, and I'm going to put JavaScript on it, and I'm going to see what it's capable of. Like, I feel like more people just need to be incredibly curious and dive into that, because that's like the one trait I see in a lot of people where that habit carries over into. It makes the difference between two types of developers. One who is just trying to go through the perfect curriculum and learn what they think they need to learn, versus one who is trying to go through a curriculum and being like, okay, well, you're telling me that this works, but why does it work? I want to dig into it. I'm going to look at the documentation, and I'm going to look at like what this component, or like, you know, maybe I'm not comfortable with the CSS library or framework, and I want to know what the hell is happening to make these components do what they're doing. Like what's the actual code that creates this component, instead of me just pulling it in. Don't tell me that I just need to put it in to build an app. I want to figure out why it's working. And I want to like maybe even try to build my own basic version of it, right? And so many people that are coming into this industry don't have that curiosity and that drive enough. They're not interested in it enough to continue digging in. Like, you know, when we kind of got into the industry, and you have more experience in the industry than me, you're probably curious of just building shit and solving problems and diving into tech. And this is interesting. Oh, this is interesting. And you had that curiosity, you explored it. And it's like, and it's not just coding boot camps. I think coding boot camps are also dealing with this, because they're having people come in that are not like, they take their foot off the gas after the coding boot camp. The coding boot camp is like, look, you're going to spend the next 6 months like diving into heavy project work. Here's probably what you should learn. And I find a lot of people are not following through. So coding boot camps are having trouble with students graduating their program, and self-taught developers are not getting the right mindset to start with to actually dig deep into this career that's going to give them, because you have to be curious, because a foundation, there's so much to learn. People want to skip over it, but there's so much to learn. And even just understanding why this abstraction exists. What problem does it solve? Okay, why does this abstraction exist? What problem does it solve? They're not taking the time to do it because they don't give a shit enough about this industry. They're not curious about tech. And I think that mindset can shift. I think with the right teachers, the right content creators, you can really refocus that and get them to critically think about what excites them about tech. What problems do they want to solve? But I think a lot of people are just saying, you know what, buy my course. You'll become a developer in this time frame.
Well, and I feel for them too, because it's like, what do you sell it on? Like they do, the boot camps do need to have like something. People want to have some outcomes. Yeah, but yeah, how do you, yeah, I mean, that's something I've struggled with. I'm like, hey, we're gonna hang out and make stuff together. But like people are like, okay, then what? Then I'll be done. But like I think what you're saying is a big deal, the creativity, but also I think part of what that creativity needs to connect to is the outcome, like the user using the thing. A while ago, a lot of people wanted to get into like iOS apps. Like a lot of people were just like, yeah, I want to build an app. I'm excited. I want to have my app in the App Store. I want people to use my app. But most of the people I've been seeing over the last couple of years, because I mean, I'm a little embarrassed about how much time I spend a lot embarrassed about how much time I spend in the coding bootcamp Reddit. But over the last couple of years, I have definitely seen it shift down a little, where people they don't want to show their work. They're not very proud of their stuff. They're more just kind of mad about the timeline. And now they're saying, okay, well, I got to go to college now. And I'm like, okay, I don't think it's going to work for you either way, because you don't like this stuff. What about making something and showing it to people and like seeing if it works, not just how it works behind the scenes, but how it works in society. Like, how do these apps, like they are our ability to have ultimate power over any sort of corporation. Like anybody can build anything these days with hardly anything. It's kind of amazing. Like if people are so good at programming, but they can't find a job, I know it's hard, but you could make an app, you could start a business. Like there are lots of opportunities if you actually have that, that interest and that, what am I looking for? That when you are having, you feel good about yourself, confidence.
Confidence.
Yeah. I think that people need to be, yeah, they need to be inquisitive and tinkering, and they need to want to do it. And then, yeah, if they can find somebody who can mentor them, or who can, or a school that is in alignment with what they're doing, and it can get them around more people doing it, and it can invigorate them, then awesome, great. But a lot of people are just asking, okay, well, this one takes longer than this one. This one's more expensive than this one, or just my least favorite, it's not worth it. Like they've just looked at like an $8,000 or $15,000 price and somehow decided, like, I don't know, like the cost of that building they probably rented and the 5 teachers that help you. Like it's actually really inexpensive if it has any value at all. So I don't know. I think that, and then the whole idea with the computer science is the same. Like I have people I'm friends with in computer science right now in their 4th year and 2nd year, and I see in their discords in there, like they're all just phoning, not all of them, but a lot of them are just chat GPTing their way through. They're not learning anything. Like I'm worried we're gonna have like a 10-year gap of thinking just in general across all realms. It's gonna be weird. I don't know what to expect. But I don't think those people are gonna find jobs either. Or a lot of them, like a shocking percentage, I don't think are going to be hireable. And I think that with the changing, I mean, yeah, and I don't know. I guess the other part is like, what are we talking? Are we talking about web development here, or are we talking about, like, I just wrote a post the other day, like, are we talking about the other like 30 industries that you could be like getting into as a computer science major? Like, these are not the same thing. I'm not saying that one is better than the other. I'm saying they're both totally different things that have different importance. Like you can't just be like, oh, I guess I'll go to computer science school for 5 years and not know that that's different than going to a boot camp for 6 months that might get you a job within a year, that might have you working for many years, that might have you meet that guy who you start a company with and changes your whole life and you move to that other country. Who knows what's going to happen? Or, I mean, I just happen to have these books sitting around, but like this computer science book, every time I open up this thing, I'm like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to show them. I'm going to learn everything in computer science school. It's so boring. Like I absolutely like have no interest in this. And it's just me. That's just me. What I like to do is I like to build user interfaces. I like to make things that work really good because I'm frustrated about when I try to go find a doctor or I try to book an appointment. Like I feel like there is this digital gate of terrible designers and terrible developers that are ultimately going to make it so that like one day I die or I can't get services I need, or it's going to be some walled garden of abilities. And I personally, I think that that's like a really important thing to consider as well. But yeah, I just don't think, I think people just are really want to have this mysterious software engineering job. They have no idea what it is. They have no connection to like, oh, I want to build something for my friend or for me, or this thing I want to solve, or I'm interested in whatever. And then also, I think that everyone is ignoring how some of this technology is going to go away. Like we're not going to need to write as much boilerplate. And I think that people need to start getting more crossover roles. Like in this book, this one, Continuous Discovery Habits, she's got this chart here of like the product trio. And it's like, it's like product manager and designer, engineer. But I think that like people need to be crossing over those things. Like you might go to school and you might learn how to build a full stack web application, but maybe your favorite part was like documenting the design system. Maybe you're really kind of more like a project manager engineer crossover, or, whatever it might be. Maybe you like ended up spending more time in Figma and you liked kind of helping the front end developers understand and kind of, cross over that design system kind of language. Like, and especially at these big giant organizations, there's so many weird roles and like hundreds of people when at a little agency, it'd be like 2 of us and they've got like hundreds of people running meetings all the time about this stuff. So it depends. I think people aren't looking at, I think there's a lot of people who shouldn't be software engineers, but maybe should be a different role and aren't looking there. So maybe what the coding bootcamp is not to make you 100% nailing that. Maybe it's just to help you explore all that. And then to come out the other end and say, okay, now I understand what it's like to whatever, build a Rails app or build a MERN app. or I learned Python on the back end and now I learned whatever JavaScript on the front end. I can see this thing. Where am I going to fit in? Maybe plan for a timeline. Maybe, instead of saying I'm going to immediately jump into this career as a working person, maybe people just need to be more honest with themselves. But I don't think that coding boot camps are really in a position where they can afford to tell people that they're just a really fun introduction to the industry, which is like what I've kind of forced myself into saying, but it's not a good sales pitch. Um, it's not a good sales pitch. I'm like, I won't teach you anything, but I'll introduce you to everything there is and show you exactly what you need to do to learn it. But that's, again, not a good sales pitch. You can't say 90% of people work at logo you've seen before or whatever people are doing, So yeah, sorry, tangent. Yeah, I think that I think people need to get a little more realistic, that's for sure. But also they don't need to be such crazy haters. Like let's just narrow down what is a boot camp even capable of? When are you gonna like really squeeze that out, right? Squeeze every piece of value you can out of that thing. And when are you gonna go there and maybe it's just gonna cost a bunch of money, and people spend money on college all the time. Like, how many people who go to school for English, like, what do? Do they become Englishers? English engineers? Well, there's all sorts of jobs out there. So maybe the idea of a boot camp is just changing. I don't know. Or what? I don't know. I don't know what it is. I mean, in the army, you go through the boot camp or you like get kicked out. And then maybe you're ready to be in the army at all for you don't go straight to like corporal or whatever. I don't know anything about the army, so wrong words.
Fair enough. So I really understand, and I agree there's a shift of what a coding boot camp should be and what it should provide. And I don't think coding boot camps are able to sell and I've talked to different staff. I know what they want to do, but they know how they need to market. And there's definitely a misalignment and an uncomfortable feeling in some staff when like good teachers know what needs to be done at coding boot camps. There are a lot of really good teachers and instructors that have been helping aspiring developers for a long time. And then the executive staff knows what needs to be sold in a market that's very rough right now, and they're already struggling to get students. How do you shift that mindset into, you know what, we're going to give you a lot of exposure to what's out there, what's available, and we're going to give you that template, we're going to give you that confidence, and then you continue learning depending on what path you want to choose. I think that's actually way more valuable, and I think that's worth even over easily $10,000. But to get people to understand that, you're not going to understand that until you're in the industry. It's really hard to understand what you're supposed to aim for and what price you should be looking for things and what the value of different types of education is. You don't know when you're a new developer and you just hear a bunch of surface level advice and like, stay off Reddit, stay off Twitter. Like it just, there's this whole, and there's this negative spiral of people just being depressed because they're not finding jobs. They're getting a reality check. And I've said this before, most aspiring developers that are trying to become developers right now, they will never become developers. They're going to give up. They're going to burn out. They're going to get sick of what they did. But also, most importantly, because they don't really have that curiosity and enjoyment in tech. Like you said, you show this picture of like, what the hell do I want to build? What do I want to build for my friend? What do I think would be really cool, or what solves a problem that I know would benefit other people? How can I do that through technology? I have the power of technology. I am not at the mercy of companies. If I want to, I can launch a product and I can gain financial freedom from that. Like, there are so many avenues that if you just understand the power of what you're learning and you're willing to take the time to truly dig deep into this learning, you're going to have so many options. But I think you're just seeing a lot of anger from people that just they didn't get a dev job as quickly. The market is rough and it's taken longer. They're having to go back to old jobs. Their money is sinking. They're going into debt. And there's just so much anger. And how the hell do you navigate all of that noise? Like I said, easy solution is stay off Reddit, stay off Twitter. Like, you do those two things and you build meaningful connections in the industry, go to meetups, participate in hackathons, meet other successful developers that aren't getting caught up in that noise, that can become good mentors, that can kind of expose you to what positions are available, what you can do in tech. Like, I think a lot of the noise is just coming from a lot of very upset people. And there's one other thing, and I'm curious what your opinion is of Next.js. I see Next.js as a tool. And Next.js, you could look at any other framework, and we could talk about it like a CSS library like Tailwind or something like that. Yeah. This is pushed by so many content creators and so many courses. They are setting, I feel like, a lot of these courses, so you have content creators that push the popularity of stuff like this on the front end. And courses get created out of it because content creators and coding boot camps, different institutions want to create things that people are asking for, even though they don't need it. They're like, how can we survive? How can we make money? How can we pay the bills? We got to look at what's popular and teach what's popular. But I see so many people, and this is my gripe with Next.js. Next.js is a tool. I think it's an interesting tool for front-end developers to create essentially kind of like very basic full stack applications and get a product out there. That it's an awesome tool for that. It's optimized and it's very SEO friendly. And you have these abstractions that make it so you could do this quickly, and you don't need to understand all the building blocks that make up Next.js. The problem is it's a really cool tool for experienced developers, but I've seen an excessive amount of people that pick up Next.js so quickly in their journey. And they could build all of this stuff with it, and they could build it very fast. But man, when I can build this really cool application very quickly and I can feel confident, like, why the hell am I going to invest time into diving deep into the fundamentals that make up this framework? I feel stupid when I dive back into those fundamentals because it is a long and grueling journey. You have to have grit for it. You have to feel stupid. It's going to challenge you in so many ways. It's easy and fun and gives you a dopamine reward when you could build something with the framework as a new developer. You feel like shit when you realize how little you truly know and someone tells you you need to go back into the foundations. No, screw this. I felt better with Next.js. But like you said, they know how to build like one specific niche type of application, and they are lost. They're not hireable for so many different positions where like Next.js isn't the most popular thing. Like, you should be learning SCSS, like get a preprocessor. Like, that's one of the most popular things, just basic CSS, not Tailwind. You don't bring in Tailwind. You should be learning like fundamental JavaScript stuff. Most companies don't use Next.js. Why is this so prevalent among aspiring developers where they're getting the message they need to learn Next.js? They dive into it so quickly. I feel like there's a huge disconnect with what content creators are pushing for new aspiring developers and what they need to do. But it's frameworks like that I think are breaking people's minds.
Yeah, I agree. Or I think I've kind of been through this a few times. Like, you can probably find me back on Stack Overflow, like trying to like ban Bootstrap discussions in the CS, like, and stuff like that. Because I was like, this is just going to create more questions. But yeah, I don't know what it is exactly. And I feel like this is maybe a sweeping generalization that's unfair, but in my experience going to meetups, working with people, anonymous people online, real people, real instructors, course creators, famous course creators that we all know. And I think that there's something that, like, the sort of person who's good enough to like really learn all that stuff, also, I think often that doesn't have the same sort of empathy or the ability to remember when they didn't know something. And That might be one of my, for better or worse, superpowers because I can go back to like, well, we have an empty text editor. What are we gonna do? Like that's just how I just love breaking things back down to the beginning and like rethinking them and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I was in that position myself. It was like I had kind of learned jQuery enough to like copy things. I could not even have told you what a JavaScript object was. This is many years into my career, like getting paid as a developer. Angular 1.1 came out or whatever, original Angular. I got into it enough, but just was like staying up all night making these directives. I had no idea what I was doing. And then Angular switched to Angular 2. And I was like, no, it's like a complete rewrite. Like I have no idea what's happening at all. Like they just took away like 6 months of me staying up all night, just ripped it out from under me, you know? And so then I was like, I was doing all of the research and I was like, Ember, you'll never let me down. And so I dug really deep into Ember and I still love Ember. But yeah, like a ways in, and this, you know, maybe 2014 or something, a ways in, I was asking questions in the Ember community and just getting kind of these responses like, what's he like? And I started to realize, okay, I'm asking questions that are way off the mark because I don't even understand what this class is that, you know, they brought in way before classes were even around, you know, natively and everything. Or, you know, I didn't understand anything. I didn't understand so I get it. You can be in a position where you think you're like pretty good, and you can seriously know like nothing. And because we're just creatures of habit and we fill in the gaps. We type stuff out. And, you know, I'm working with some people right now who went through full boot camps and I'm teaching them HTML. And they're like, wow, I'd never thought about any of this stuff like this before. It's amazing. Like it's amazing how much crazy HTML they're writing. Sorry, guys. But, you know, I was there. Like, I get it. And I empathize. And I had to tell myself, I had to go back. Like I literally said, okay, I have to get out of this Ember thing. I thought I was making a lot of headway, but I have to actually go back and just learn JavaScript. Luckily for me, I was obsessed enough with HTML and CSS, and I had found a really good video series from Chris Coyier, like right at the right time that it all made it click. So that was pretty lucky on my part, I think. But I had the HTML and CSS down. Like I built sites every night. I copied a site, you know, Starbucks site, copy it. Oh, they changed it, copy it again. This famous site, copy it, copy it, copy it. Like MySpace, copy it, like everything. So, but I never did that with JavaScript. And I had worked at a place where there was like the PHP guy and he did that. So I like wasn't allowed to do that. And nobody else there was like better than me. So that's the other thing. You got to work somewhere where you're going to be around people who are better than you at some extent to learn from. But yeah, I had to go back and basically just be super humbled. So I think people should just start there and not waste all that emotional time of doing that. And like another thing you mentioned was like I don't know, something reminded me of this, but people, they mistake their passion sometimes for the like excitement when they see that green light turn on when they do these coding challenges. And coding challenges and building something that a user can use are like so far apart. And I think that's another confusion people have. They feel like they've been putting years in, but they haven't even started. And yeah, it's a weird part.
Okay. This is true. It's really difficult. I need to continue digging into, because people will like hyper focus on something. They'll hyper focus on coding challenges. They'll hyper focus on just building even just like mock-ups or taking a mock-up and building the website. They'll hyper focus on going through tutorial-based projects. But I notice there's a lot of dopamine hits they're looking for in reality to make them feel good, like they're making progress. And that, until you dig into building the stuff and being curious, or like figuring out what you're curious about and building things to solve real problems, that's where the real growth is going to happen. And a lot of people are looking for dopamine hits, and coding challenges give you a lot of those. And that's why, you know, it's simple and you don't have to think. Like, you don't have to think about you don't have to identify problems that exist in the world. Like
Yeah.
that, as a professional developer, you are capable of taking your knowledge of the world, and now you have this new power, and now you could take that power to solve these problems. And that's the link that you need to establish. But instead, you want a very curated problem. You want to be told what to do. Essentially, you want to be a code monkey. Companies don't hire code monkeys anymore. They hire problem solvers, and your coding is a tool to be able to do that. But it's easy to get those dopamine hits with coding challenges. And to me, it just sounds like a mindset shift is needed. But I think like a lot of people are never going to get this mindset shift, and like if you force it too hard on them, they're probably just going to quit. So do you let them
Yeah. Well, I kind of like skipped over your question about the Next.js people. I don't think that they necessarily, I don't think there's like a secret, like behind the scenes, like Next.js people. Like, I think people just get excited about themselves and they're like, I know Next.js really good. I'm going to teach it. But yeah, like that they are not connected to it as far as they're not connected to what's best for the person they're teaching. So in a way, they're getting their own kind of dopamine hits too, and all of the the social media of it all, and the upvotes and things like that. But I think people need to get honest with it. Like you can't blame like the concept of a coding boot camp. Like you signed up, you should check it out. You should have some developer friends look at it. You need to be serious about why you chose that place, and you need to be honest, but maybe they need a little more information too. Like you're gonna have to go to work and be a developer. This isn't a job where you clock in and you gossip. I mean, it can be where you clock in, you talk shit on Slack, and then at the end of the day, you leave an hour early and you whatever. Like you just make lots of money and hang out. Like that's not what this job is. Like if you don't want to design, like if you don't want to build web applications, yeah, at least enough that like you can try to enjoy your work. I know that everyone hates it when I say that you could enjoy your work, but I don't think this is the type of job where you can just totally leave it at where you just like I clock in and I move the database back and forth, and then I go home and I do like some totally different thing. Like I think people need to plan on like, and I say this about any project, personal project, like if you don't want to spend 2 years doing it, don't even start it. It's not going to happen. It's going to die on the vine. Like, I've started a lot of projects. When you're serious, plan on it taking a while. A boot camp might be a way to do that. Finding somebody who could mentor you, or, there's tons of things. There's like mentor crews, code mentor, there's the one that starts with a Z. There's people like you, there's people out there. There's lots of people out there who kind of like offer other alternative like personal like connections too. And there's community college, and there's local meetups. Like there's so many different opportunities out there, but you need to know what you want and stop putting all of the onus on this like school. You paid them. They're not evil because they're a business. You have to draw the line somewhere. Like we can't just throw up our hands in the air and say like it's evil, the corporations, like the government, like everyone's screwing everyone. Like if you signed up for a 13-week boot camp and you came out the other end and you can't code at all, and and the thing you're mad about is not getting a job, like you should be considering like what you're supposed to actually learn there. I don't know. There's just such a wild disconnect. I'm like, it makes me I don't know if I'm crazy or not. Like these are supposed to be problem solvers. And it doesn't seem like we're doing basic math here. You can't get a job building websites if you can't build a website, or if it takes you 6 weeks to build a website that should take 10 minutes. Like it's just unreasonable. So I don't know. I feel bad for the good coding boot camps, and I feel bad for the people who meant well and got kind of the raw end of a deal, and all the other people. I kind of just feel like, hey, you're the middle ground people. We all went to college. I didn't become a famous artist. I didn't want to draw pictures all night long every night. I didn't want to go to art parties. I didn't become a famous artist. It's okay. But that's just part of life. Things also cost money sometimes. I pay so much money. I've probably paid for like 6 boot camps worth of money for like, working with like an Ember like core team member for like a 6 week, 2 hours a week for 6 weeks, and like, like $4,000. Like these things, if you don't think it's valuable, and then you're just gonna like turn your head and say, never mind, I shouldn't have done it, not worth it. Like you don't know what the value is, and you're choosing the wrong things. And I don't think like you can really blame everyone else for that either. So
There's a huge lack of accountability, self-accountability. And you've really highlighted that. You're also in the Reddit world where that is significantly higher. But I actually want to ask you one question, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. I realize we're 10 minutes over.
sorry, I've just been like going off on tangents.
No, I appreciate it. It's interesting. That's why I kind of just let you go off. But if you had to make one post on, like a few different programming subreddits, maybe like CS career questions, r/coding boot camps, and you would have like 90% of people that are trying to become programmers read that Reddit post, like what's a solid message you just want to get through people's heads?
Yeah, well, I write them all the time. And the problem is the audience is so all over the place. There's not a message. I have to just try every angle I can. I have to say, like, hey, yeah, it might cost $20,000, but if you make $60,000 now and then you make $100,000 for the next 5 years, like, how is that even why are you even talking about the money? Get to work, like, get in there building stuff. Like, that's one angle. The other angle is, hey, maybe you should actually talk to people who've gone to the school, or go talk to the people at the school. If there's nobody you can go to, if there's no one responsible, like, I've been trying really hard not to name any schools or anything, but like, there are schools that are run by real people where their name and they have a track record and they have serious, well-known developers who help develop their curriculum. Then there's a bunch of other ones who are just some VC who knows, who license 7 levels down. And then you're going there because it's cheaper, but what are you going to get? What you pay for, man. And so I don't know. That's another angle. The other angle is like, I don't know. There's so many angles. I just drive myself crazy over it. I also the other angle is I just don't think, stop thinking about, is it a boot camp or a computer science degree? If you want to study computer science, please do that. Go study it. Spend 4 or 5 years studying it. Get out there, get internships, figure out a career, a real cool, interesting career, doing all sorts of stuff. We have no idea what it will be, because you're not even going to find out for 5 years. You're just getting prepared. This is like, going into a career in politics is going to be your life. If you, for some reason, want to learn how to build web applications and you think you can take that knowledge, get in a job somewhere, and then start your career that way, do that. But stop pretending like there's some magical choice you make and then the winners get a little crown and they get like an easy web developer job, because that doesn't exist either. So, I mean, just take some time to consider this. Build a website. That's what we're here for, right? Building websites. If you can't build a website, you don't want to build a website, go somewhere else. But I don't know. Anyway, I could go on forever with that. I know you're trying to round things out in a smart way, because you're a good host, but
I like it. I appreciate you just venting. I feel like you just took like a lot of your Reddit posts and you just said them, and that's awesome, because people need to hear them. So,
well, I do try to keep them formal, like organized when I can, but yeah, I got a lot of thoughts.
Well, like even with my live stream, it was just a random rant. I ignored chat and people listen. And I think people want to listen. I think people just don't know what to do. There's just so much noise. And I feel like you can really formalize a lot of things. You can really try to think about the personalities that are going to listen to this. So I have to curate this advice. And I found that sometimes you just need to vent. Sometimes you just need to yell, and literally whatever you are thinking, you spit it out raw. You might piss some people off, but I've noticed people want that feedback because they are lost. All these other content creators, they're giving them this perfectly curated feedback and they're cushioning them. Everything is going to be okay. And they don't like their discussions aren't really critical of the industry. They don't dig deep. They don't really say what they really want to say. It's just all curated and people are tired of it. And you vent, people listen. People want to hear that raw feedback. So like, you do you with the Reddit posts, but feel free to get a bit unhinged. You got to think about self-branding and all that, but yeah, that's just, I guess, my perspective. And I will probably do more live streams where I just rant and I piss some people off and I get called a gatekeeper and a bunch of other labels. And okay, that's fine.
You can always have some feelings at a time too. It doesn't mean they're
Yeah.
set in stone for life. Sometimes you got to just get some ideas off your chest and then they kind of inspire some other ideas. It's good.
Yeah. I like that. Have feelings and show that in your content. I like that. So I think we covered quite a bit. I'm actually really happy with this conversation. Pretty raw conversation. I don't know what I'm going to title it. I'll figure that out. But I'll listen through this again and that should be fun. But before we end this episode, feel free to shout yourself out and, anything else you want to shout out.
Yeah. Okay. My name's Derek Wood. I'm Sheriff Derek on the internet. If you can't see me, it's because I blocked you, because I block like tons of people on Reddit now, and it's way better. Yeah, I do this thing called Perpetual Education. It's been evolving over the years. I'm not really sure what even to call it right now. It's kind of like an interactive education consulting experience. But I'm also building out some curriculums for some other schools also. And I do consulting on the side. I recently was working with Better Life on like a kind of like a social network type of thing. So I do a bunch of stuff and I'm always open for chats. I do the open office hours on Sundays in Coding Bootcamp. So and you can find my website because you know how to use the internet. So if anybody wants to talk to me, let me know.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, you do offer free sessions, just open office hours. And I remember seeing a post where like people won't sign up for it. You offer it, they complain, but they don't even sign up and take the action.
Sometimes I've had quite a few cool people sign up, or quite a few interesting people come. It's good, but it's never the people who are saying I can't get a job because and I have a great portfolio. They won't show up because then they have to kind of face the music.
I like that. I actually really like that. All right, cool. Well, let's end it there. If you're watching on YouTube, let me know what you think in the comments. Agree, disagree, but like ultimately, I actually just want to hear like where you're getting stuck. What's your frustration? Like you guys hear a lot of advice, information from different content creators. I feel like it's really noisy. What do you think about all this? Let me know in the comments. But Derek, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.